Welcome to Masterminds in Wisdom. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Today we're tackling The Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli.
Yeah, it's a fascinating look at how our understanding of time, kind of falls apart the more you think about it.
It definitely challenges some basic assumptions.
For sure.
Like, did you know time moves faster on top of a mountain?
Then at sea level, you mean?
Exactly.
It's wild, right? It all comes down to gravity and how it warps space-time.
Okay, break that down for me. How does gravity affect time?
Think of it like a sheet, a big sheet stretched out flat.
Okay, cut the sheet.
Now imagine you put, say, a bowling ball right in the middle.
Creates a dip, right?
Exactly. Massive objects, like planets, do the same thing to space-time.
So the Earth is like a giant bowling ball on this space-time sheet.
You got it. And the deeper that dip, the slower time flows compared to areas further away.
So someone living on the top floor of a skyscraper is actually aging faster than someone in the basement.
Technically, yes. But the difference is so tiny in everyday life, we don't notice it.
But it's still real.
Oh, absolutely. Einstein predicted this way before we had clocks sensitive enough to actually measure it.
That's incredible. So wait, if everyone experiences time a little differently, depending on where they are, what does now even mean?
Yeah, that's where things get really weird. Rovelli argues that a universal now might just be an illusion.
An illusion. How so?
Okay, imagine you're looking at a friend through a telescope, right? But your friend lives on, say, Proxima Centauri b.
That's the closest star system to ours, isn't it?
Well, about 4 light years away.
So when I'm looking at my friend through the telescope,
You're not seeing them as they are right now. You're seeing them as they were 4 years ago.
because it took that long for the light from their planet to reach us.
Right, so what are they doing now? It's like 4 years in the future from what you see, but how can your now be different from theirs?
So there isn't one single now for the entire universe.
It seems that way. What we think of as now might actually be limited by the speed of light.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get a headache. So you're saying that across vast distances, like galactic scales,
Our concept of now basically breaks down.
what's simultaneous for me here on Earth might not be simultaneous for someone like way out there.
Exactly. Time isn't this rigid, straight line. It's intertwined with our position in space and how fast we're moving.
This is making time feel a lot less straightforward than I thought.
Oh, we're just getting started.
Okay, well, I'm ready for the next layer of mind bending.
Let's dive into the idea of time's direction. Why do we remember the past but not the future? Why can't we, unscramble an egg?
Yeah, that's always bugged me. Why does time seem to have this one-way street sign?
That's the mystery of the arrow of time. And it's a big one. It all comes down to the second law of thermodynamics, really, and this thing called entropy.
Okay, thermodynamics. That sounds a little intimidating.
It's not so bad. You might have seen this equation, like a 0, 0.
Vaguely.
Yeah.
Maybe from high school physics, but
Don't worry about the math. What it's basically saying is that entropy always increases over time.
and entropy is?
Entropy is basically a measure of disorder in a system. The simplest way to think about it. Imagine a deck of cards.
All right, I've got my deck of cards.
There's only one way they can be perfectly ordered, right?
Ace through king, all 4 suits.
But there are tons of ways to shuffle them to make them disordered.
Makes sense. So things naturally tend to become more disordered because there are simply more ways to be messy.
Exactly. It's like your desk, right?
On my inbox. Don't even get me started on my inbox.
Yeah.
So entropy increasing. That's the arrow of time.
Think of it this way. When you see a glass shatter or an egg scramble, we're witnessing entropy in action. Those things can't spontaneously unbreak or unscramble.
Because that would mean going from a state of higher disorder to lower disorder, decreasing entropy.
Which, according to the second law, just doesn't happen, at least not on the macro scale.
So the arrow of time, the direction it flows, is tied to this concept of entropy always increasing.
It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's the basic idea. Now, there was a physicist, Boltzmann. He had this really intriguing thought.
Hit me with it.
He suggested that if we could, zoom in and see every single tiny particle interaction happening.
Like on an atomic level.
Yeah. He thought that the distinction between past and future would actually disappear. It's our kind of blurred, big picture view of reality that creates this illusion of time moving forward.
Hold on. So you're saying time might not have a direction at all. It's just our limited perspective that makes it seem that way.
Mind-blowing, right? There's no fundamental arrow of time etched into the fabric of the universe. It's an emergent property, a consequence of how we perceive things.
Wow. So if time isn't this absolute marching forward thing, what is it, really?
Now that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? We've got philosophers, scientists, everyone's been wrestling with this for centuries.
Didn't Aristotle say something about time being a measure of change?
He did. He thought if nothing changed, there would be no time. Pretty insightful for his time.
Then there's Newton, right? Absolute time, the universal clock ticking away.
Yeah, Newton's framework was super influential for a long time, but it doesn't quite fit with what we've learned from modern physics, like Einstein's relativity.
Relativity in space-time, right? Can you give me a quick refresher on space-time?
Sure, it's basically the idea that space and time aren't separate things. They're woven together like a fabric, hence space-time. And this fabric isn't static either. It can be warped and curved by massive objects, like, say, a planet.
So the Earth is warping this space-time fabric.
Yep. And those warps and curves are what we experience as gravity.
Okay, my brain is officially starting to hurt. So instead of time ticking away in the background, it's an active participant in the universe, along with space.
Exactly. It's shaping the universe and being shaped by it.
This is definitely more complicated than I thought.
And we haven't even touched on quantum mechanics yet.
Quantum mechanics? Oh boy. We're going even deeper down the rabbit hole.
Just wait till we get to quantized time. That'll really shake things up.
Quantized time, what's that?
Imagine time not as a smooth, continuous flow, but more like a digital clock ticking in tiny jumps.
Time moving in little skips and jumps. Are you serious?
That's one interpretation of it. It's a frontier area in physics. Still a lot we don't know.
So instead of a river, time's more like a series of snapshots. But if time is just this series of quantum events, does that mean the world is frozen in place?
Not at all. In fact, I think it points to a reality that's much more dynamic and interconnected than we ever realized.
Okay, help me out here. I'm having trouble picturing this.
Try shifting your perspective. Instead of seeing the world as objects existing in time, imagine it as a vast network of events. They're constantly changing, influencing each other. Everything's connected.
So instead of things being static, they just don't need a separate time variable to exist.
Right. Change is built into this web of interconnected events. And this is where Rovelli gets really radical. He argues that the reason why we don't see a time variable in the fundamental equations of physics is because time is already woven into the fabric of reality.
It's not external. It's part of how the universe works at the most basic level.
Exactly. It's inherent to the processes that make up the universe.
So, like, I shouldn't think of a rock as just a static object. It's really a collection of quantum fields, constantly in motion, interacting with everything around it.
And you're getting it. And it's not just rocks. Everything we perceive as static is actually a dynamic process.
So a kiss, a thunderstorm, a human life. These are all just events unfolding in this interconnected web.
Beautifully put.
I'm starting to see how this timeless view of the universe might actually make it feel more vibrant, more alive. But it still leaves me wondering if our everyday experience of time is kind of an illusion. What does that mean for how we should live our lives?
Yeah, it's a big question. If the universe doesn't really work on this like linear timeline that we experience, why does time feel so real to us? Why do we feel so bound by it? It's one of those paradoxes that Rovelli keeps coming back to. It's like physics is telling us time might not be a main character in the cosmic play, but it's also the only way we can experience that play. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
So if this sense of time isn't coming from some, fundamental law of physics, where is it coming from? Why do we experience it so strongly as humans?
Well, Ravelli suggests that our experience of time is, it's like a consequence of our limited perspective. It's like we talked about with entropy, remember? It makes more sense from our blurred, big picture view.
Right, yeah.
Same idea here. We don't see the universe in all its crazy microscopic detail. We don't see every single interaction between particles, every little thing happening.
So our brains kind of simplify things. We pick up on patterns, on regularities, and that's what gives us the sense of time flowing.
Exactly. Think about all the cycles we see around us,
Yeah.
Day and night, seasons changing, the ticking of a clock.
Those repeating patterns give us a framework. Our brains take that and build our sense of past, present, future.
Yeah, I think so. It's like, think about those time-lapse videos where you see a flower blooming in a few seconds. It's condensing a really complex process down into a neat sequence. Or think about watching waves on the shore,
Okay.
Each wave is different, but that rhythm, the way they keep coming in, it creates this sense of flow that we associate with time passing.
I like that analogy. So time might not be this big force driving everything, but something that emerges from, how we perceive those patterns in the world.
I think Ravelli would agree with that. And, it's not just about external patterns either. Our brains have literally evolved to make sense of the world using time. Like, we're wired to anticipate, to predict, to tell stories that unfold over time.
Part of how we make sense of things.
Yeah.
Survival, too, right?
Absolutely. So our sense of time, it's as much biology as it is physics. It's kind of both working together.
That's a pretty big idea to wrap your head around. So if time is this subjective experience, does that mean we have more control over it than we think?
I think that's a really, really interesting question. Rovelli argues that this understanding of time, it can be liberating. It can free us from feeling trapped by this, rigid linear view and let us embrace how fluid things really are.
It makes you think about all those sayings, time flies when you're having fun, or time heals all wounds. Maybe they're pointing to something real about how our experience of time shifts and changes.
I think so. And it highlights the importance of being present,
Yeah.
really focusing on the now. If time isn't this fixed external thing, if it's something we create through our experiences, well, then the present moment becomes really powerful.
So maybe instead of worrying about deadlines or like dwelling on the past, we should be focusing on what's happening right now, on building relationships, on making a difference.
Yeah, I love that. I think the order of time really challenges us to change our relationship with time, to see it less as something that controls us, more like something we're a part of.
Well, I know after this deep dive, I'm feeling a lot less anxious about being on time and a lot more interested in exploring the nature of time itself. It's a real mystery, but a fascinating one.
Definitely a mystery, but it's also, full of wonder and possibilities.
It's a good reminder that even though physics might point to a universe that works differently than we thought, the human experience of time is still a really important part of what makes us human.
Couldn't said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this mind-bending journey through the order of time. It's a book that will definitely stay with me for a while. And for all of you listening, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. That's all for this deep dive. See you next time.